Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Stash Chat. My name is Yvette and my husband and I are the creators of Stash Hub, the sewing organizer app. So as part of our mission with our business, we really want to encourage everyone to fall back in love with their sewing stash. So as part of that, we're talking to lots of amazing people from the sewing community about their own sewing stash. So thank you to everyone who's joined so far. So today I'm going to be talking to Zoe so she's the host of Check Your Thread podcast, which is all about sustainability and sewing. And she's also on Sozo blog. So I'm just inviting her now. I'm really excited to hear more about her stash. So do comment in the comments box and ask any questions if you've got any for Zoe. Let's just see if we can get her live. This took a few attempts last time. So yeah, how is everyone doing? What are you up to right now? Are you sewing anything, or are you stashing, or you just taking a little break, having a watch? Let me know what you're up to whilst I try and get Zoe into the chat. Hello, welcome to Stash Chat Live. Oh, hello Vera, I've got your question at the ready. Can you try and request again, please, Zoe? We had this issue last week. Sewing Sensation said they're repairing clothes. That's never a fun job, but it will be very satisfying to see your pile go down. It'd be good to have that out of the way. All right, let's try again. Oh, hello Zoe.
Hello.
That's all good. It just gives a few more people a chance to join.
You were very calm then. I was like, oh, and you're like, oh, hi, yeah, it's just going to take a couple of minutes. That was very impressive. Very cool.
The exact same thing happened last week. I fear it will happen every week, but people will get used to it. It will become become part of the brand. So I'll skip the first 5 minutes.
Yeah. That's just the bit where she's just trying to fiddle with the tech. I've never done one of these. I've never tried to initiate one of these before. Is it tricky?
No, I just started the live, and then where you requested, it comes up saying that you've asked to join, and then I can accept you. But for some reason, the first time it doesn't work. So we're here now, so we're all good to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you for inviting me. This is very exciting.
Yeah, really exciting. And I know a lot of people are really intrigued to hear about your stash as well.
Yeah, my complicated relationship with my stash.
Yeah, well, I think that was going to make for a really interesting episode then.
We'll see.
So do you want to start off with just a little bit about who you are and your sewing background?
Sure. Well, my name's Zoe. I am a sewing blogger going on 15 years now at Sozo, What Do You Know? I am also, yes, I'm the host of the Check Your Thread podcast, which looks at how to sew more sustainably. And I'm also a writer, and I also work part-time at Fabric Godmother, and I teach sewing classes. And when I'm not doing those things, I'm sewing for myself, and I'm thinking about sewing. So everything is to do with sewing pretty much.
Sewing, yeah, sounds like ideal. You've just got loads of different hats, but they're all sewing. They're all handmade hats.
Yeah. Lots of handmade hats, lots of bucket hats.
So with your you've been in the sewing community for like 15 years, but how long have you been sewing for?
Oh yeah. Well, so my mum was a seamstress when I was growing up. She did a lot of repairs and alterations and dressmaking. So it's kind of always been in my life. But as a teenager, it took me a while to kind of think of sewing as like a fun, creative outlet. So I did a lot of kind of checking out other disciplines and stuff. And it actually took me a few years to kind of come back to realizing that sewing actually is a really, creative and exciting thing. So then I did a degree in fashion design. So that was over 20 years ago now. And I've been sewing in one form or another ever since, really. But sewing my own clothes pretty passionately for the last like 15 years or so. Yeah.
Excellent. So for your whole time where you've been really passionate about sewing, you've also been really passionate about sharing that with the community, which is amazing.
Absolutely. And it very much is, I mean, sharing about sewing, talking about what I'm making, why I'm making it, and the kind of related topics around sewing, you know, things like body image and feminism and sustainability and ethics and all those other things. That's really interested me. And sometimes, sometimes almost talking about those things, and exploring ideas through clothing is as much of a passion of mine as the actual making a thing to put on my body, you know.
Yeah, and I feel like that definitely comes across like in your podcast and in what you share as well. Like there's a lot like more to it rather than just, oh, this is a thing I've made. Like it's clearly you know, I feel like sewing's not just a hobby, like it can really change the whole way that you see everything, and I think that's really exciting.
Absolutely. And that's kind of what I tried to do with the podcast, really. It's like exploring loads of ideas, but through the lens of making clothes, you know, because it is, you know, it does touch upon so many other aspects of life. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting, exciting hobby, and there are so many different aspects to it. But you know, I've kind of niched down to a certain extent with looking at how to do it more sustainably, which is, I thought it would just be like a, you know, that was going to be a few episodes, but I'm over 100 episodes in now, and there's literally every day I find new people that I want to talk to, or another topic that I want to cover or explore further. So I don't think I'm going to be running out of any ideas anytime soon.
The podcast is amazing. So if anyone's watching that hasn't listened to Check Your Thread, you should definitely listen. And there's a massive back catalogue as well. So if you haven't listened, you're in quite a good position to like binge it all now.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I don't know how it's been over 100 episodes now. It's kind of wild, but it's great. And I can, you know, sometimes when you see other podcasts and they've got like 300, 500 episodes, and you think, oh, like that's a lot of work. But it's like when you're just in it and you're just doing it and you've got this momentum, and, you know, as I say, like one thing leads to another thing, leads to another thing, leads to another person, leads to another topic. It's easy. And I think that there's, you know, even if you've like looked at a topic, there's so many different angles within that topic as well, you know. So
yeah,
you know, you can really zoom out of a topic and look at it in a more broader sense or from another angle, or you can really go really into the details, you know. Like for example, I did an episode that was just about like thread, you know, just thread, and there was loads to talk about with just that, you know. Or you could zoom really far out and literally take a topic like, is sewing sustainable, like really, you know, something that's really broad, and do that as well. So yeah,
amazing. So since you started the podcast, do you feel like doing the podcast has kind of held you more accountable to being more sustainable in your sewing practice?
That's such a good question.
Or do you think you would just do exactly the same thing anyway? Because it is something you're really passionate about, so I can see that you would do that.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I would say, I don't know if it changes how, in terms of like the accountability, maybe it does, but definitely in terms of the things that I've learned through making it and the people I've spoken to through making it, I've definitely gained lots of more ideas, and that has certainly affected how I sew, and how I will do going forward as well. Like, yeah, in so many ways. But yeah, I do my little bit at the beginning of every episode where I'm talking about like what I'm sewing. I don't know that I would do anything differently really, because that's kind of what I was doing when I was doing my blog anyway. It's just the format in which I'm sharing it is different, you know.
Yeah. No, that's really good actually, because I feel like you're an authority on sewing and sustainability now. Like running the podcast, you're a source of information there, but because you're passionate about it, that's what you're doing anyway. So
yeah,
you don't feel like you're under pressure in that position. You're in a position where you're just gaining more and more inspiration.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think,
yeah, and I don't see myself as an authority. I see myself as someone who's just really into it and is into exploring it. And I very much see the podcast as, it's my journey into figuring it out as best I can, and I hope that people come along, you know, on that journey. But my journey is just my journey. It's not the only journey. It's certainly not the only way to explore the topic of how to make stuff more sustainably, you know. So I definitely hope that people feel that they're coming along with me as I'm exploring stuff, you know, rather than like I have a lot of wisdom, because I'm gaining loads of insights, but I certainly don't come from an expert position, you know. I'm more of a, like a massive fan.
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing, and it's I think it's really inspiring as well for the listeners to, like, they can hear you learning and like learn along with you, and they become inspired with you rather than just being like told this is what you should be doing, and they're like, oh, I don't think that's going to work for me actually. Like, I think it's actually really, really good.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, there are some episodes where, like, for example, when I'm doing some of my more solo ones, that is more like I've done a butt ton of research, you know, and I've really tried to distill it. And I hope that those ones don't come across as like I have the answer. What I hope those come across is like I've got a lot of hard-won tips, and I really hope that these will help you. I've tried to, you know, present them in the most, you know, the clearest, easiest to absorb way. So that's what I hope. Anyway, I mean, maybe people hear it differently. I'm not sure.
I mean, the work that you've done like comes across in those episodes, definitely. So it's really good. It's really good. Anyway, I feel like I'm just sort of fangirling over your episode.
And I'm a massive fan of Stash Hub as well. And I don't know if like, I've got this idea of one day I'm going to create like the Check Your Thread drinking game. So every time there are certain mentions or certain things pop up, everyone has to like take a swig of their drink. And mentioning Stash Hub, I think, is definitely going to be one of the things that's going to have to make people drink, because I do mention it a lot, because it is a really, really good tool for keeping track of what you've got and the resources that you already own.
Yeah, definitely. So how would you describe your own stash?
Okay, so I'll explain how it looks. It is all folded up fairly neatly in my airing cupboard in my bathroom. So I can't take you there right now, I'm afraid, because my daughter's having a shower. But it's quite a deep airing cupboard, I must admit. It is quite a deep one, and it takes kind of one and a half, if I'm honest, it's 2 shelves of the airing cupboard. I've got half of one shelf is pieces of fabric for garment making that are all folded. So they're pieces that are generally like 1 meter and above. And I've got, and I know because I've got it written down, I've got 12 pieces of fabric allotted for kids' clothes, and I've got 19 pieces allotted for adults' clothes. But then where it goes a bit wild is I've got bags and bags of scraps and leftovers from previous projects, and I've got a lot of garments I want to harvest the fabric from as well. And that is a bit, I feel like the lengths of fabric, I feel I've got under control, and I feel happy with how that is. But the rest, I mean, it's all put into types. So I've got like sweatshirting with sweatshirting, lightweight denim with lightweight denim, stretchy denim with stretchy, you know. And then I've got 3 tubs in the corner of my kind of sewing area, which is in our dining area. And then that is wovens, scraps this is. Then I've got like thicker weight fabrics like ponties and a few bit, not so much sweatshirting now because that's moved. And then like lighter weight jerseys. So it's kind of organized. Oh, and there's a secret bag of like viscose scraps as well. But
those are really difficult to know what to do with, aren't they?
Absolutely. Did you see the trousers that I made recently?
Yeah.
That was a massive thought experiment of like, what can we do with viscose scraps? Because I know you can use them for pocket bags, but when you've made a dress and you've got like a squillion scraps and weird shaped leftovers, that you're gonna have to make a lot of jeans to get through that amount of scraps for pocket bags or something.
Well, so many pockets, and you need sometimes like you need quite a big scrap to do a decent sized pocket, and so then you're like, oh, this piece of scrap's too small.
Yeah.
If you have seen Zoe's viscose scrap trousers, they're actually so good, because like when you initially said the idea, I was not fully convinced, I have to be honest. I was like, oh,
it was very much an experiment. It was like, well, let's see how this goes for sure.
But I think the way that you picked the scraps and the way they all coordinate together definitely made it look like much more cohesive, rather than like you just wearing scraps over your legs. It looks like an actual garment. It looks really good.
Well, I think that goes to show what a narrow range of colours I tend to work in. That all my not all my scraps, but a lot of my scraps are very of the more autumnal range. You know, love a mustard, love a teal, love a forest green, love a rust, and those generally seem to kind of work quite well. So I was really pleased with how that worked out. Yeah.
So we're coming into your season now, then.
Yes, we are. I love a bit of autumn. What about you?
Well, I quite like the summer because I like all the bright colours and like I like a floral. But yeah, this year like the heat wave just really got me. It was horrible.
It was
I
very
like
extreme this summer, wasn't it? It was either horrendous or horrendously hot. It was like, oh no, I lied. June was good, wasn't it? June was nice.
yeah. And then it all sort of went a bit crazy. But yeah, I like when the weather is, you know, about sort of like 18 degrees, like fair, but not too bright, and like not that way the whole sky goes grey and really, really bright, like even worse when the sun, like a very, you know, like a sort of sickly poet type temperature where it's just very, very mild and pleasant. There's nothing offensive about it. That's what I like.
Nothing offensive. That's what we want from weather. Exactly.
Yeah. We want it to be like, you know, how's the weather? Oh, nothing of note, nothing to talk about. You're like, great, let's move on. Let's not have to say, oh, heat wave, this, or big storm, or too much rain, or
No, we don't have the wardrobe for that.
But
speaking of seasonal and stashes, I have recently come up with a new strategy for my stash. I'm actually going to make a podcast episode on it soon, but I was going to tell you about it first.
Ooh, sneak peek.
So I'm coining this the seasonal stash, for lack of another term. But what I've started to do, so this is specifically the length of fabrics for garments. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to whittle down those bits of fabric a bit more. Like I don't imagine getting to like 0, but I do want to have less resources in fabric state and more in garment state is my ideal goal. So how I'm dealing with that at the moment is I am putting the piece that also, I'll back up, sorry. Also, I think that it can be quite overwhelming. Like you've got all this fabric, it's looking at you, it's all crying out like, use me, and you're like, oh, I don't know what to go for. So what I've started doing is putting it into 3 piles. So at the front, the bit where when I open the bathroom cupboard, that's the bit I see first, is the things that I can imagine using in, like, I can imagine using it within the season that's ahead. So
sort of like, I think 3 months type time.
Yeah, before the weather's going to change dramatically again. So right now I just changed it around yesterday actually, and I put all the bits I can imagine for the things that I'd like to make this autumn at the front, and then the bits behind it are the bits that I can imagine I'm going to use the season after, so maybe within 6 months possibly. And then the bits at the back are things like, I don't know what this is going to be. I know I want it because I don't have anything in my stash that I genuinely don't want or can't imagine using. But yeah, so that's actually working for me really well at the moment, having those 3 piles. So as I say, yesterday I just kind of switched it around. So at the front, I've just got about 5 or 6 pieces that I think I'm probably going to use in the next 3 months. And if it doesn't happen, that's fine. I'll just shift it back.
It makes it time, you know, easier to like decide what you're going to work on as well. It's less overwhelming than being faced with like all of the fabric.
Absolutely. And it went like, I don't want to make summer things now, so the bits that I didn't get around to using just the summer gone, that's moved to the back. Some of it I've got plans for, you know, I'll get around to it at some point. Some of it I'm not too sure. Yeah, so that's working for me really well anyway. And I think that I mean, obviously it depends on what your physical space is and how your stash is arranged, but I can imagine that might actually help some people feel less overwhelmed by what they've got and kind of excited to use some of their pieces, because once you kind of narrow your options a bit, you can really hone in on it, can't you, and make some plans.
Yeah, definitely. Even if you like don't have space to like rearrange everything, even if you just sort of like pick the things that you're like, I do want to sew this, you know, this season, and maybe, you know, make a plan and stash up. But
yeah, absolutely.
I think sometimes if you make a plan for every single fabric, then you just feel like you've got a massive to-do list, and it might be like a bit too much if you're the sort of person who likes to like get everything kind of completed and off the list. Like I'm, you know, now the season's changing, I'm already feeling a bit like sad about the summer projects and the summer fabrics that I didn't get around to doing. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to like move that project to the bottom of the list. Maybe I should delete that project so it's not there on the list anymore, so I don't feel sad about it.
This has become quite traumatic.
It's more like, I think you can, because there's so much inspiration all the time, you can end up with kind of unrealistic goals of like what you want to achieve in a season. So I think just, and it helps you focus on where you are now as well. If you're like, okay, well, this is what I want to do, rather than being like, oh, I didn't do all these projects last month. Like,
and it's like, what do I need now? I mean, need is a strong word, because most of us have a wardrobe full of clothes, but sometimes there is things that, you know, a garment has worn out and you need, you know, you want to kind of replicate it or make something that fulfills a similar function as well. So yeah, because I sew a lot for my kids as well, and they keep growing. So there is definitely some need going on with them for sure. Like I can sense that my daughter's going to need like a long sleeve top quite soon, and she's about to grow out of her vest that she likes to wear underneath jumpers so they're not itchy and things. So there is that as well. So it's a lot to juggle, but yeah, but it should be fun. And I think that by relieving some of the intensity of making all these plans and all this fabric, like you can breathe a bit more and enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think there is kind of a fine line between like getting really organized and then just like putting too much pressure on yourself, and you want to make sure that you're still having a good time and you're still like working on what's inspiring you in the moment.
Because otherwise it could easily become just another like things to do list with like all the other stuff you've got to do around the house.
So I think we can't have this chat without talking about Last Sewist Standing.
Yes, Last Sewist Standing.
Explain what the challenge is in case anyone's not heard of it.
So Last Sewist Standing is a challenge that is organised and hosted by Miss Tashley, and it has, I believe it is in its 3rd or 4th year. She'll have to pop up and hopefully let us know for sure. Anyway, this is the first time I've done it. It started on Valentine's Day this year. So everyone who enters, they pick a racehorse name. I've forgotten what mine is. Oh no, I'm gonna have to. I know I changed it. I think it originally was called Stashy Pants, and then I changed it to something. Anyway,
there can't be horses left in the race now, so you probably find them.
Yeah. I know that Miss Tashley's got an Excel spreadsheet, so I can always request that information. But yeah, so it basically, the goal is to see how long you can go just sewing with the stuff that you've already got. So everybody instantly is put into the heavyweight division. So that is people that are not buying fabric or patterns or notions, including zips and buttons and things. You can buy sewing needles and thread. So you can buy machine needles, presumably hand needles, and thread. But everything else, oh look, Miss Tashley's just popped up there. She says, lol, I'll check the records. Thank you. I forgot. I know it was a good name. I was proud of it, but if you could check.
Everyone's got the best name is probably Zoe's one.
Well, thank you. But we'll see. Yeah. So, and then if you decide to buy some patterns or notions, or I think you can buy lining and ribbing counts as a notion rather than fabric, you then go down into the lightweight division and you're just not buying fabric. So there's 2 divisions. I'm currently in the heavyweight still, and we are 2/3 of the way through the year, so we've got 101 days left, and I believe approximately 30 to 40 people are still in it, I think. But
so,
we don't know.
One question that we got in advance was from Vera, who's at 80 Vera, and she said, what's your secret to doing so well in the Last Sewist Standing? Because she's also joining in and she wants to beat you.
Oh really? I love this. What is my secret? The scrap projects. I think the scraps. In fact, I was having a little comment with her earlier saying, how are they not going down? Like, we're focusing on using our scraps, but it's defying physics. They're not disappearing. Like, I don't know what's going on. So I think that's it. It's also, I'm also participating in Scrap Busting September, which is organized and hosted by Meg Grandstaff, who is the _grand_stash on Instagram. She was also one of my guests very recently on my podcast, episode 103, I think. Really good conversation. Definitely recommend that. She's amazing. And she talks about the kind of inspiration behind what made her start that, because she was just drowning in scraps. And she had a big sort out, and it's got loads of plants, and she's been so prolific this month. Like, go and check out her feed, because it is just, and she's doing yarn as well. She's working through some of her yarn stash as well, and it is just wild, like the amount of stuff that she's posting, that she's been making. That's been very inspiring, and so that's been a good impetus for me also to get cracking. So I've been making some pants, I've been making some scrunchies, finish off those trousers, you know, with all the scraps. I'm trying to think what else I've got going on. I've got to make some more undies for my son soon. This is always undies, always undies.
Have you found it like limiting at all, or have you found it like, has, I don't know, how has it changed your relationship with your stash?
Good question. Okay, so I'm loving it. Something about having like a restriction makes you more resourceful, and I thought that was the case, and now I can confirm that it definitely makes you more resourceful. So it's forcing me to be a little bit cleverer in terms of, for example, I'm running out of elastic. So how can I make the bits of elastic that I've got work better? Like, can I change the shape or dimensions of the waistband, or can I just put elastic just in the back bit, or, you know, things like that? Can I change it to a button closure? Or so it's doing things like that, which is really fulfilling in a different way. I've also really enjoyed, so because I work at Fabric Godmother one day a week, I do look at a lot of beautiful fabric quite regularly. And although I have been quite good, it's very hard not to look at it and be like, oh, what would that be? Or what could I make from that? And then the ideas just go on and on and on and on. And you're always planning future projects, and you're kind of forgetting, you know, what you've already got in the old stash. So I'm really loving kind of switching off that part of my brain and getting that bit of my brain space back, you know, to actually think about what I've got. And that's been really nice. And it feels like I'm kind of valuing my resources better, which is one of the things that I talk about a lot on the podcast. It's really important to me as a value, and I feel like this is actually helping me kind of live that value a bit more, you know.
Has it felt like quite a detox as well, of like buying and like constantly getting, you know, new ideas that you then don't have time to make? Do you feel a bit more like calmer in your like planning of projects?
Yeah. The brain is calmer. The brain is calmer. I must admit, I was getting quite good at not buying too much fabric anyway. Like, I think last year I only bought 6 pieces of fabric all year. So, wow. Which is probably, for some people, that's probably a lot. But considering I don't buy any clothing myself at all, 6 pieces isn't that much. I think if you were thought of like, well, somebody would easily buy 6 garments throughout a year, you know. So I was getting better at kind of restraining myself, but yeah, just quietening that part of my brain it's been really joyful, actually. I really appreciated that part of it. What else is going on with it? Sorry, go say again.
Kind of like an exercise in mindfulness, with like appreciating what you've already got and having to think more about each project as well, you know, how you could execute it with what you've already got.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's been fun. It's been really, really fun. And let's face it, like, there's all those plans that we've already made. I'm actually getting around to doing some of them now, you know, so that feels like, oh, good. I don't feel like, sometimes it feels like a burden, as we said. Yeah, so actually, but I've got a bit of fabric that I would love some advice on. So I've got this piece of fabric. It is very pretty. I think we can all agree it's very pretty. It's very much my colours. So it is a white and kind of rust colour seersucker. It's kind of got the body, it's very hard to do this, isn't it, while you're holding a phone? Sorry. It's kind of got the amount of body to it like a poplin. you know, it's kind of got a slight kind of crispness to it. It's got a little bit of stretch in there as well. And I've got 2.5 meters. So initially my thoughts were blouse, cute blouse, ruffles, high neck, something like that. Let's ignore the fact that I've already got two almost exactly the same in my wardrobe anyway. But so then I was feeling a bit guilty like that because I could, you know, that is kind of covered. But I've got 2.5 meters and that's more than you need for a blouse. So then I'm thinking maybe like, could I squeeze a dress out of it? Could it be some kind of like jumpsuit, play suit if I squeeze it very carefully? I think it's quite wide. So I would love any ideas. Love any ideas. So it is kind of more autumny colours, but I guess the fabric weight is kind of more summery, perhaps trans season if you layer it, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. When you said like it's structured and you've got 2.5 meters, my immediate thought was like Anthea blouse. It would hold those.
I'm wearing an Anthea blouse. Who isn't wearing? I think everyone should put their hands up saying, I'm wearing an Anthea blouse.
give a heart if you've got Anthea blouse. Sewing Sensation says, do you have a coordinating fabric?
Fabric. Because it's a seersucker, it's got quite a specific texture. That's my only thing. If it was like a, you know, like a pure poplin or a lawn or something, you could probably, because it's got this texture, I feel like finding another fabric that's going to kind of coordinate with it might be tricky. But
with like, if you made it as a top with like a sort of, I don't know, corduroy trousers or something darker underneath. Yeah.
But I want to use up all 2.5 meters or close as possible. That's the thing.
I reckon you could squeeze a dress out of 2.5 meters, but probably not with a massive sleeve.
Not with a exactly. I think, it's not going to be a massive sleeve. Oh, I was even thinking today, would a Zadie jumpsuit work? Would it work in a kind of poplin-y weight? I don't know.
I haven't made the Zadie, so let us know in the comments box.
A unicorn who's not made the Zadie jumpsuit.
I'm never convinced about wraps. I feel like they're always a bit risky, but that's probably just with like ready-to-wear ones that don't fit me well. All right, we've got a few more comments coming in.
I have to say I don't wear skirts, by the way. I'm really pushing myself into wearing. I've got now 2 dresses, I think, because I made the fabric godmother peony recently. I'm now 3, including a very hot weather one. So some said
Tilly in the buttons, Marnie or indigo.
So my colleague Phoebe made a Marnie out of this, and she looks adorable. But I think she said she can't wear tights with it, and I have to wear tights.
So. A ruby skirt, but we already said maybe not skirt.
This one for Zadie. I think I could squeeze a Zadie out of less than 3 meters if I eliminated the pockets, because I did do that before.
Yeah, we've got. We've got 3 Zadie votes. Although someone says it might be fun to pattern match the squares.
Fun, yeah. I'm up for a challenge. Someone said the new Van Hock pattern or something. I don't know what that is.
No.
Minds need to know.
Yeah, you'll have to send that to us.
A link, please. Yes, or a name or something. That'd be great. Okay, so there's that. And I'm going to show you a piece of fabric that I've had too long. It's been too long. But I do feel ready to cut into it. This is some very beautiful, and I'm going to hold it out because it's got some really cool kind of geometric shapes on it. Isn't it lovely?
I just saw the black and white, and then the colours was like a little surprise for me.
I'm not doing a very good job of holding this up, I'm sorry. But it's got these kind of abstract geometric shapes, and I love the colours. It's got I think it's a viscose crepe. I think I've got 2 meters. Yes, so this has been a burden for literal years. This has been stressing me out for years of what to do with this fabric. And I think I have decided a long sleeve pussy bow blouse.
Yes.
I think that's where we're going with that. I think it needs a bit of drama, and I love, like a nice pussy bow blouse kind of thing.
It's going to be so good. And I feel like you can dress that up and down as well, like that, because that could look so smart if you wore it with like black trousers and some like fat shoes. But you could also just like wear it with some dungarees, and it would just be really funky and fun.
I love a dungaree.
Yeah. Sewing therapy handbook. Okay,
Oh,
I'm gonna
okay,
look that
okay,
up.
okay. I'm going to check that out. Thank you for that. Thank you for. Oh, I'm folding. Oh, this. Oh, oh. Okay, I'm going to check that out. Thank you. Very helpful people. I love this.
Cool. So yeah, I was just checking to make sure that we've covered anything. Handbook had the syllables backwards. Yeah, nearly got there. We probably could have found it with Google.
Thank
So yeah, let us know in the comments if you've got any questions for Zoe to answer now. Otherwise, we'll start wrapping it up.
Otherwise, better hold your hold your face. But also, I'm going to do some episodes on stashes coming up. So if anyone has any ideas of angles or things or topics or anything, tips, tricks, I don't know, anything, then let me know, because I think that it's a topic that obviously there's a lot to be spoken about. And I don't necessarily think that having a stash is a bad thing, because we're makers and we need stuff to make with. But I think that there is a point where, and this is going to be different for everybody, obviously, but I think there is a point where I think like you've probably got enough and you need to start using a bit of it before you buy some more. And I guess that's different for everyone. And I kind of want to explore that idea, but I want to do it carefully and, you know, because I don't want to prescribe anything. And also, like, as I say, it's different for everybody, and everyone has a different relationship with their you know, with their belongings and their possessions. So I've got to approach it with care.
Naomi's tip is don't work in a fabric shop.
Oh, she can talk. She can talk. She's my colleague at Fabric Godmother.
But yeah, I think this is quite a similar thing to what we're trying to do with the stash chats, because everyone's stash is like really different, and you know, some, like, I want to create a space where people feel like they can talk about their stash but like not be judged for it, because even sometimes people are like, oh, you know, I think my stash is too big, but then it's not as bad as some other people, and you're like, well, what's bad about someone else's stash? Like, if it's maybe it's bigger than yours, but that would be bad for you, but that might not be bad for them. Like, they might really need to have all of their stuff there as like a way to inspire them, and they feel restrained by not having enough stuff. So I think it's just a case of, like, you know, when you start feeling uncomfortable with your stash and it feels overwhelming, like, that's when you need to think, well, what am I going to do now to, you know, stop buying as much or use what I've got. But I think it's just really different depending on like lots of different factors. So that'll be really interesting episodes. We've just got a message in from the Hungry Sewist. How do you square a buying ban with wanting to support small businesses? That's my excuse for not going on a buying ban.
All the time. This is an excellent question, and it's something I think about a lot. Okay, well, you can support small businesses. You can buy. Well, okay, so maybe we only support small businesses, and we don't go to some of the bigger, you know, names I'm not going to mention. But you know, that could be one way. But I mean, I know not every business stocks necessarily whatever you want, but maybe also, I don't know, maybe something about, as we were talking about, creating some restriction is, you know, it is a path to creativity as well. So maybe only buying from your favorite small business. It's really tough. It is really tough. And I mean, ultimately you can distill that, and that is the problem with capitalism, isn't it? That's why we've got climate change. That is why we are drowning in a sea of plastic that you know, is not going to biodegrade for thousands of years, because capitalism, you know, to move, to feed people, you know, it requires us to buy stuff, but we're buying too much stuff. So it is a really difficult, you know, thing to square, and it's something that I think about all the time. And I wish I had an easy answer, but all I think that we can do is just remember that every time we spend some money, that is a vote. We don't spend some money is also a vote, you know. So just when you are making a purchase, do it mindfully. Think about it, think it through, take a pause, think about where you want that money to go. But yeah, I wish I had a better answer, but really I would be solving all the problems of the world if I had that answer. So
yeah, I mean, my way of justifying some of my like fabric spending is that I say, well, you know, although I've spent this much money this month, that's my entertainment budget and my clothing budget. So I haven't given any money to fast fashion because I'm going to make my clothes, and I've given money to this small business instead because I've bought their fabric. But yeah, I think it's not really organically supporting small businesses if you're buying things that you don't need or that you can't afford, because then, you know, that's not going to be sustainable in the long term. And then that business then can't rely on your custom in the future. So I think, you know, sharing things that you've made really supports businesses, and, you know, sharing like posts by them can really help support them as well. Like, you don't have to always be buying to like stay part of the community, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've just seen there, Miss Tashley, so someone's just said, well, not everyone will go on a buying ban at the same time. That's a very good point. And so you shouldn't guilt yourself out of being mindful with the purchase, not purchasing. Thank you for that. As a good point. And as Miss Tashley said, yes, it's also your therapy budget as well. Sewing is not therapy. Let's all say sewing is not therapy, but it does play some really important roles for people beyond clothing ourselves. You know, it can be we could call it your mindfulness budget. How about that?
Yeah, it's you're investing time to spend with yourself, I think. If you're spending that time sewing and thinking about what you want to make and how it makes you feel.
Absolutely. And I mean, ultimately humans are makers. That's something that we do. And I was going down a rabbit hole shortly before I started making the podcast episode, absolutely. But when I was really struggling with like, can I even be buying stuff? You know, like if I really want to be as sustainable as possible, can I keep doing this? And it was kind of almost spiraling to the point where I was kind of, not in a healthy place. And then I had a conversation with the hand sewing expert, Louise Owen Sonstrom, and she was like, yeah, but we're makers. Like, we are makers. And we do derive so much pleasure and joy and benefit from it, but we need to be careful with what we're doing and how we're purchasing to kind of feed that need. So it's all a balance, isn't it? Ultimately, everything is a balance, I think.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like with sustainability, you still have to live your life, and you should still enjoy your life. Like, sometimes it can feel like such a big issue, and you're just like, if I stop doing everything, if I just didn't exist anymore at all, that actually wouldn't even help. Like, it's such a big issue with problems that like just one person can't solve. So you just have to pick the things that you think matter to you and that you can do you know, in a way that works.
Exactly.
Like living your life. So I think
that's why I talk about sewing more sustainably rather than sewing sustainably, because I don't think sewing can be sustainable in the purest sense if you're buying new stuff. So, you know, and using energy, which, you know, we do generally unless you've got a hand crank machine. So that's why it's like, what can we do more sustainably? You know, we can eat more sustainably, we can probably travel around the world a little bit more sustainably, we can certainly sew more sustainably. So so that's where I'm focusing my little bit on, and I hope somebody else has got those other things covered.
But definitely just like raising awareness and changing the way that people think about things as well, like even just more mindfully, you know, using what you've got, like, you know, being, you know, grateful for the resources that you already own, I think is just a really important starting place.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is where Stash Hub can help.
Yes. So I think that's like a perfect end point now for our
full circle.
So thank you everyone for joining us. I'm planning to put this episode on YouTube as well, if you prefer to watch on YouTube, because I know it's not very easy to like pause and stuff when you watch the playbacks, but it'll also be on Instagram. And so thank you so much for joining us, Zoe.
So welcome. I hope we can have another conversation at some point soon as well, because I love to see you.
Let me know if you ever need a guest for Check Your Thread. I'll happily come on and talk about.
Can you imagine the amount of drinking everyone would be doing? Because the amount of mentioning the Stash Hub, everyone would just be like,
it's from Stash Hub. Oh no!
On the floor. It's 2 days. I don't think we can do that.
Yeah, probably not. We had a comment higher up. I can't remember who it was from now, but they were like, "Don't drink and drive your sewing machine. Listen to that episode when you're finished your sewing."
Good point. Yeah.
All right, well, have a great evening, everyone. And I just want to say next week we're going to be joined by Jess from So What If I Sew. So she's done a big audit of her whole stash. So that'll be really interesting to hear about, because she's going through a big transitional period in her life right now. So she's sort of, taking in all of her stash before she starts on her PhD. So yeah, really excited to talk to Jess and about how her stash is now going to fit in with her changing lifestyle. So yeah, we'll be back at 8 p.m. next Thursday with Jess. So thanks for watching Stash Chats. Thanks for watching Kitty and the Tiger. Love this. Thanks to you both. Amazing handle. That's so fun. Anyway, bye everyone, and thank you, Zoe.
Bye.